Shift Network.
And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Summer of Peace 2020. I'm Philip Helmick, the Global Peace Ambassador for the Shift Network. And we have two beautiful souls here with us. We have Pato Banton and
Antoinette
Rootsdawtah. Yay. Well, we're gonna kick this off. First of all, Pato is a Grammy-nominated reggae legend with 11 children, which I think is just amazing. And he's toured with UB40 and Sting. But tragically, in 2000, when he was on tour with Peter Gabriel, he learned that two of his sons had been shot in a drive-by shooting. And immediately after, his career was on hold. And then he got involved with community and educational initiatives that would consume the next 6 years of his life of really helping young people avoid violence. And he created the organization called Musical Connections in partnership with a number of groups, provided tuition and counseling for at-risk young people in 16 different communities across the city of Birmingham, UK. Pato's from the UK. And then he's, for that work, he's received Lifetime Achievement Award from the BBC. His list of accomplishments just goes on and on in the realm of music. And then Antoinette is a world-renowned keyboardist in the reggae industry. And in 2019, she and Pato were named by the United Religious Initiative as Goodwill ambassadors of the Golden Rule.
Mm-hmm.
And Antoinette has her own rich background of spirituality, outreach ministry, and just a whole list of things. And so it's a couple made in heaven. And we're going to kick this off with a little screen share, and we're going to go to one of their new releases. So if you just
my latest release, it's called Black Lives Matter 2.
Okay.
And it's really based on the struggle of the black race, ever since the slave trade, all the way up to modern days. And it's a history lesson and also a cry for justice.
Okay, wonderful. So let's do a little screen share here, and all right, can you see it there, Pato?
Yeah.
Without a proven crime or charge, this world can be
bitter like a glass of wine. So many conversations are a waste of time, like throwing your pearls before a bunch of swine. Genuine is so hard to find, especially when you're living on the front line. We know that all lives matter, but remember that Black Lives Matter too. So you wanna make America great again? Please tell me when, with your long history of genocide, a trail of blood that you just can't hide, the murder and rape of all native tribes, so many years of slavery, a wicked crime. Oh, Jah, it still blows my conscious mind. Slavery, sharecropping, and then Jim Crow. You always tear us down every time we try to grow. Yes, Martin Luther paid the greatest price for peacefully fighting for our civil rights. Now how many more must we sacrifice? Let me tell me right, American pride. Pray 11 times, 76 bullets took Jamarion's life. Nearly 9 minutes on the neck of George Floyd. Lord, I can still hear us right. We know that all lives matter, but remember that Black Lives Matter too. Makes me know we got racist police, not afraid to show it. And prejudice people who don't even know it. Every time we tell them that Black Lives Matter, you should see the temperature getting hotter. Chatter, telling us again that all lives matter. The national data is mostly black people getting better, killed or in jail for the simplest of matter. Fatherless families shattered and scattered. They most nice make a connected sunny, but not a song when we die innocently. They call us the home of the brave and of the free. 50 years of slavery, but the whole world sees the brutality. Confederate flag for hypocrisy. Never too late to truly believe what we can see. We will achieve together as a family. We know that all lives matter, but remember that Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter too. You got to remember that Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter too. Black Lives Matter too.
Oh, my friends. Very, very, very powerful.
Thank you.
Let's go straight into, clearly the inspiration behind this is George Floyd killing. And so just tell us a little bit about your creation here.
I think, Pato, before you go into it, it was actually before George Floyd's killing when you actually started writing the songs. So go ahead.
Yeah, go on. You talk first.
No, it's your song.
Were you observing me? So
yeah, I was observing. I was there. He started writing this years ago because there was an argument about all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. And so he wanted to write a song called Black Lives Matter Too. And we kept having this discussion. Why do people have such a hard time understanding that not until all lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter Too? So he started writing down these words quite a few years ago. We actually worked on the music while we were touring a few years ago, but we've been having this discussion for years already. So it's just because we've had the time off, how we've actually been able to actually finish the piece.
So I was working on it, and then I got sidetracked and doing a whole lot of stuff. But once we and it was only a very quick idea that we put down, and we only put down about 60 seconds of the music, me, Antoinette, and my guitarist, Andy Kushner. And then we put down some vocals around the idea. I was just trying to put down a rough idea. But once the COVID-19 kicked in and then we were under lockdown, I went back into the studio and I found a song, and I'm like, wow, right now it's so appropriate. It's even more appropriate than when I put down the idea. And my main mission was to present the idea that, you know, because there's so many people that find the term Black Lives Matter offensive. And I realized that if it was presented as Black Lives Matter too, you know, which I spoke to quite a few people about, and they says that is much less, they found that less offensive to them because they just had this mental block that when Black people said Black Lives Matter, that they was only talking about themselves. And so by saying Black Lives Matter too was an all-inclusive terminology. And so that was my approach as far as the song was concerned. And as far as the video was concerned, it was an opportunity for me, for those people who just couldn't get it, you know, to present something visually so that they can see that, you know, from the amount of years Black people spent as slaves in America, not getting paid, then released only to face, you know, Jim Crow, sharecropping, which was unfair. Jim Crow, everything has been against us and forced us into poverty and not given us a fair chance in American society. And now to be incarcerated at the rate that we are, which is totally disgusting, the rate that Black people are incarcerated, which is now another form of slavery. And then to be killed by the law enforcement that are supposed to serve and protect us. And for 99% of the police brutality and killings to go unanswered for. You know, they get away with 99% of what they do. And the 1% that they don't get away with is usually because of protests. And so this is why the George Floyd protest was so strong, because at first they only just fired them. It wasn't until the protest that they actually put, you know.
No, they weren't even going to fire them. The protest started with the firing and then the charge of those police officers.
And so, you know, it was really a history lesson to allow people to see what has happened to the Black race in America, where we've come from, what we've been through, and what our current state of affairs is, you know. And yes, there are individual Black people who are very successful in America, but as a race, we are still being persecuted. And Martin Luther King Jr. started the civil rights movements, which brought about a few changes, but we have a long way to go. And we have to educate the majority of this nation so that they can understand our dilemma, hopefully become empathetic, and hopefully stand by us as allies and seek changes with us for progress.
I want to add that with the protests, so even though there are successful Black people, they still get police brutality as well too. Black mayors are having the police called on them for trying to make a deposit for withdrawing cash. You know, lawyers are being detained on the street. And these people haven't done anything. So they could be as successful. They can have all the money they have in the world because of the color of their skin. They can still have the police being called on them. And then regarding MLK and the civil rights, there was a lot of people involved. He was the forefront, but there was a lot of other people that were doing their own thing, like the Southern Poverty League, a lot of individuals, you know, Rosa Parks, a lot of people who started off with the Emmett Till. So there's a lot of people involved, but it was many, many different protests and many different layers that moved it forward and moved it through. So this prison to pipeline thing that's happening, and also just the daily occurrences of racial injustices, is not just for white people to become allies and empathetic to our situation, but we want to go a next step further to make accomplices. We want white people not just to understand, we want them to be accomplices with us to stand up for racial equality and justice for all people. Because
it's no longer just a matter of not being a racist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is a very nice statement to say, I am not a racist. But with that statement, it also allows you to step away from the struggle, to sit on the sidelines. What we need every white person in America to be is anti-racist, so that they are actively involved to bring about change. Anything else is not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. Pato and Antoinette, I mean, I just have to say, you know, that combination of the music, the words, the images, the history, it's really a powerful combination. And I think you know this better than anyone about the power of music and visual arts to relay messages and stir the heart, stir the soul, and inspire action. I just want to let you know we're getting lots of comments here in the chat room. People are asking, is the video of the song available on YouTube? Yes, that was a YouTube where we saw it. And the name of the song again is?
Black Lives Matter 2.
Black Lives Matter 2.
One word.
Okay.
Yeah. And if in the chat, you can put the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the comments on the live feed.
Okay, great. So, I mean, there's several questions I just have for you. I mean,
yes.
Hey, what has it been like for you, lifelong musicians, and also actively working on peace? I mean, you had 2 sons, is it, that were killed in a drive-by, Pato?
Yeah, they didn't die. They got shot. They were in hospital, but they survived, thank God. And they were only 9 and 10. So they're not in a gang. You know, they were actually at a children's party. One of the parents was outside waiting in a car for his son. So my 2 boys ran outside of the party to go and be picked up by their mother, but they saw a hooded gunman with a shotgun sneaking up on the car of the parent that they knew. So they ran to the parent's car and says, there's a guy with a gun. But as they was telling the guy in the car, the gunman had already got around to the driver's side of the vehicle and had the shotgun pointed at the dad. But what the dad did was, when he heard gun from my kids, he flipped his seat back and went backwards. And when the guy fired the gun, the driver was already out the way. So the blast from the shotgun went through the car and hit my 2 sons at the passenger side of the car. So all the glass and the bullet shells hit them in the face and in their body. And it actually ripped the roof of the car off too. That's how strong the blast was. But so my boys saved a life, but they paid the price by ending up with some shrapnel that will be inside of their body for the rest of their lives. You know, and I had been receiving visions just before this happened that I needed to go back and do something for my community in education, but I couldn't understand what these visions were about. I was like, what is this saying to me? But as soon as that happened, I told my manager and my band, hey guys, you know, I was at the peak of my career. I was touring with Peter Gabriel. I just recorded 2 singles with Sting. I had just received a Grammy nomination for my album, Life is a Miracle. I had 5 top 20 hits in the UK, and I was on a world tour. And I said to my manager and my band, I understand now that I have a purpose which is outside, beyond music, and I have to go home and fulfill my purpose. And they all laughed. They didn't think I was serious. And I jumped on the plane and went home, took my recording studio and all my equipment and rehearsal equipment, and set up a music school in the toughest neighborhood in my community. I had a recording studio, DJ booths, a live rehearsal room, a dance studio, everything. And it took me a year to restructure this building I was renting. And the day that I was going to open the building, my landlord came to me and said, I'm sorry, but we found out you want street kids to come into our building, and we can't let you have these kids in our building. After a year of spending all my money, everything I had went into this project. But as soon as they said that and I started pulling the cables out, I heard a ring on the bell. And when I went downstairs to see who it was, I'm talking about within 30 minutes. When I went to see who it was the principal of the college, which was like half a mile up the road. And she said she heard about my setup, and they were very excited to work with Pato Banton, who was a household name, and that they would love to use my business or my center as a satellite for the college, as a music school for the college. So I told them the landlord just kicked me out. And she says, well, we have an entire floor that we're not using at the college, the 13th floor. I'm like, well, today 13 is lucky for me. So I took the offer. I asked her if she would employ my team, and the college employed every member of my team. I asked her if she would allow the kids off the street to have a room on the 13th floor where they could come and learn. She said yes, and that if they would do the level 1 course that I wrote the curriculum for, she would allow them to do any level 2 course in the entire college. At the same time this was happening, I was asked to lead 16 community centers. I was also asked to work with the head police department in our city to fight gun crime. And I involved 20 different gangs in a project I worked on called Stop the Guns, which was a recorded album and 20 videos, which got some of the gang members to collaborate with each other. And the next thing I know, I was invited to the BBC to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award for helping the police to reduce gun crime across my city. So 6 years I was involved with all of these different ventures. I created my own school, and then I started writing curriculum for colleges for kids with learning disabilities. And then after 6 years, everybody started competing with me and copying what I was doing. And I was like, yes, finally, what I'm doing is so popular now, I'm having to compete. So I said, it's time for me to go back on the road. And that's when I moved to the USA, and I haven't stopped my mission of peace and love and music and global ministry ever since. And Antoinette's been right by my side.
Wow, this is a powerful story. First of all, I'm really, really sorry what happened to your boys. You know, really sorry to hear about that. And I mean, that just must have been heartbreaking. I mean, for any parents to have something tragic like that happen. And the fact that you were already receiving these messages and intuitions that you needed to go back to your community and help out. And it sounds like there was a lot of grace and blessings and support with this movement. And it sounds like, tell us a little bit more about how the music and the opportunity created a transformational experience for the young people who participated.
Well, the first experience for me was I had a transformation first, because when I accepted the tour with Peter Gabriel, he had one condition. And his condition was that I give my time to children at risk and in poor neighborhoods, and go to these neighborhoods and do music workshops. I had never done anything like this until Peter Gabriel asked me to do that. And at first I was kind of uneasy with it, because I didn't think it was right for me to expose my band to certain neighborhoods, especially in Soweto, South Africa, where people are getting kidnapped every day. And we also went to a prison in Sicily. But the more I started doing this on this tour was the more I realized that music had such an amazing power to touch everybody, regardless of their color, regardless of their creed, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of their sex. Music just transcended all barriers and actually brought people together. As soon as my saxophone player started playing his sax, they just came out and wanted to see and learn. My drummers, my percussion player. When I started rapping and singing, I'd invite kids to come and rap with me or sing with me. And it became an exciting experience for them, and gave some of them some self-worth for a moment. And I hope it carried on. So when I went to my own community, after I got back home, my first agenda was to find out who shot my boys. And I was torn between taking revenge or forgiving. And as soon as I found out who it was behind that mask, I found out that it was one of my friend's first son. And so I was faced with taking vengeance on my friend's son and breaking his heart. And I said I couldn't do it. So I forgave this kid, and I never even reported him to the police. I forgave him, and I just asked his dad to explain to him what he had done to me and my family and my children, and that he needed to change his life around. But this kid didn't listen, and he killed somebody else. Actually, he killed somebody and ended up doing life. He's still in jail right now. So, and so once I had forgiven him, it allowed me to heal and do my best to save other children who wasn't so set in their ways. And we transformed so many children who became singers, songwriters, dancers, sound engineers, or pursued other careers because they had an opportunity to get back into education. And we also employed all of the professionals in my city. I employed all the top singers to teach singing, all the top DJs to teach DJing in 20 different communities. Sorry, 16 different communities. All the top dancers were taught at my college and taught at the communities. So anyone that was in the business of music or arts, I had them on my payroll. And the college was paying my team, and the government was funding me to do this project across the city, and everybody was benefiting. And then when we reached out from our central location to the 16 different community centers, we had 16 different communities of kids coming back to my central headquarters to enroll in courses. And because I was well known, they were all excited, not just to meet me, but to see what they could get from these courses, which were free of charge, because education in the UK is free. And in some cases, they actually give young people payments for them to pursue their education. So this was a great opportunity for everybody. And yes, I saw many transformations. One of my favorite, though, wasn't even a Black kid from my community. It was a Polish kid that was a cleaner at my college, and he couldn't even speak English properly. And when I started renovating the 13th floor and moving my equipment in, he was cleaning the floor, sweeping, and he goes, "What you do? What you do? What is this?" And I said, "This is music." And I said, "You want to get involved when we set up?" He said, "Yes, please, please." And so this Polish kid, once we established the department, he came and did the level 1 course, level 2 course, level 3 course, level 4 course, and then became one of my top teachers in sound engineering. And then he became a professional, one of the top sound engineers across my city. And by the time the 6th year was up, he was speaking perfect English, and we became very good friends. I was so proud of him. But, you know, that's just one of the stories. But yes, a lot of young kids were transformed, both Black and white and Indian.
Well, this is powerful. You know, the spirit of peace through music. I mean, you're really speaking about the power of transformation. And I want to, you know, you're sitting here with your beloved Antoinette, who herself is a powerhouse. And you were telling me prior to this interview that you'd met 30 years ago, and then you met 20 years ago, then 10 years ago, you start traveling together. And after a year, he's like, well, let's give this a try. So let's talk about, you know, you had this rich history. And then Antoinette, I'd love to hear about your history about, you know, with the ministry and music for peace, and then how the two of you came together, and then what you've been doing together with the spirit of peace through music.
Well, this is very interesting because I wasn't doing any of those things before I met Pato. The first time I met Pato was in Richmond, Virginia. I was in the opening band. And that's when I got like my first taste of like a lot of racial injustice and inequality. And then I ran into him like a decade later in Hawaii. And after doing a show there, we met again. And then years later in California. At that time when he was in California, I said, oh my God, I keep running into this guy. And each time we have a conversation, because I met him after the show, I'm not the kind of person who's starstruck. You know, I don't meet people backstage or anything else like that. But I was so impressed with the message that he had at the show, with the reggae revolution, the all white, the dancing around, and the songs that he was singing, you know, Handsworth Riot and, you know, Guarn and stuff. So I went backstage to meet him on all 3 times. And we had discussions on race, on religion, on politics, on philosophy, on spirituality, on science, you know, discussing different books. And he had this big library on his little RV bus with all these different books. We were talking about Isaac Asimov and spirituality. And each time I kept running into him, I said, hey, Pato, remember me? Remember me? You know, it's like, of course I remember you. I was like, you don't remember me. You meet tons of people every day. You don't remember me. So he said he remembered me. And then in California, I was waiting all night long in the dressing room at the House of Blues. I talked to everybody and their mama who was backstage, and he never went backstage. He was out at the merch table talking with people and signing autographs and taking pictures and having one-on-one conversations. They finally kicked us out of the House of Blues. And I'm standing there in the parking lot with my girlfriend, and I see Pato walking with this box in his hand to his RV. I said, hey, Pato, remember me? He goes, of course I remember you. I was like, you don't remember me. So we go back into the RV and we start having this discussion. And I told him about, you know, about how awesome it would be, you know, for me or any musicians to be able to work with him, because he's on such a different level than many of the artists that we've actually worked with. I worked with hundreds of artists in the reggae industry, and it's trust me, it's a scene that taken out of Spinal Tap. You know, the reggae version of Spinal Tap, the reggae version of Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. It's a very crazy scene. And then with his scene, I was like, it would be nice to work with someone like you. 3 months later, he called me and he said that he was forming a new band and he would like for me to be in the new band. I said, this is awesome, because now I'm in the Disneyland band. You know, this is a band where it's just all Disney. Everything is wonderful. Everything is positive. Everything is organized. Everything is lovely. About 6 or 7 or 8 months down the road, one of the band members said to me, you know, Pato doesn't like profanity. Now, I had been living in New York City for 10 years after I left Virginia. So when you're in New York, everything out of your mouth is F this, F that, what the F, what the effing, you know. So I was constantly, I had the worst trashiest mouth in the band. And they're like, Pato doesn't like profanity. I said, oh my God, he never said a word to me. He never mentioned this at all. You know, he's just being Pato, very tolerant of whatever anybody's doing. And I'm just there to just, you know, play my keyboards, sing the backgrounds, get my party on, have fun, you know, nothing spiritual at all. You know, I went through a time where I was raised on a lot of different religions, and I liked something in all the religions, and then I didn't like something in all of the religions. So I decided to create my own religion where God loved everybody, that the earth is more than 6,000 years old, that there is life on other planets, there's evolution. I was like, this is my religion. And then he introduced me to the Urantia book. And then that's when we started our ministry. We started this together.
Tell me about the fans first.
The fans? Oh, they came up to me. They said...
Before I introduced her to the book.
Right. They came up to me and they said, what's this book that he keeps talking about that's written by angels? I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? They're like, he sings about it every night. He's you know, he's talking about it and it's in all the songs. I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. You know, I'm just here to play my keyboards and sing the chorus. I never listened to any of the words from his music. So, 9 minutes. Yeah, so I only listened to the words from his music. So when they asked about that, I was like, well, Pato, what is this book that they're talking about? He said, it's the Urantia book. It's there with the t-shirts and the hats. You walk by it every single night, take a look at it, and then, you know, and figure it out for yourself, you know, read it for yourself and see if it's something that you're into. And that's how I started to get into the ministry and the spiritual movement with him.
And since
then, so which led onto the other thing. This is how we met Ben Bowler from Unity Earth. They were on a spiritual blog talk radio online, and the two of them met online. They were both being interviewed
about the
Urantia book. And then Ben invited us to Thailand to do a U-Day festival in Thailand, which his idea and vision was to bring all these interfaith people together, the Baha'i, the Buddhist monks, you know, the Judaism, the Jewish rabbis, different people. So we helped organize, and we did our first event in U-Day. After that, we went and did the Parliament of World Religion, and we morphed into onegod.com. From there, we morphed into U-Day Ethiopia. We did another event in Ethiopia with 60 people from around the world, religious leaders.
Traveling across
Ethiopia, Shashamane, Addis Ababa, and Lalibela. Then we went to New York and did a Colorado convergence. By that point, we were Unity Earth, a New York convergence, went and did a Toronto convergence before the Parliament of World Religion, which also led us to our last trip, which was earlier this year in Jordan, Israel, and Palestine.
And Australia.
And
India.
And India convergence. All multi-faith, all interfaith, religious leaders from around the world together, not arguing, having the best time, showing our love and tolerance and unity for peace that we want to see around the world, you know, by actively participating and being together and setting the example for the world to be able to see. If we can do this, everybody can do this.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the Unity Earth peace train has just been going along for 4 years now, and all these different events. And you have this Unity Caravan coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you're going to be part of the activities coming up here on the International Day of Peace and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I mean, when you're describing this, you're lit up. There's a lot of joy. I mean, and Pato, when you're describing the transformation of this young Polish person, there's a lot of joy. And I want you to speak about something I've seen when I was working with Search for Common Ground. You know, did a lot of work across sub-Saharan Africa in deadly conflict situations. And yet a lot of the work, particularly like with radio soap operas and also with dance troops and this and that, there was a lot of joy. So please speak to me about the power of being lit up with joy, and yet at the same time, you're addressing really difficult situations. Mm-hmm. Like the music video you have about Black Lives Matter too. There's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of joy that sings through you. At the same time, it's juxtaposed with real harshness.
Yes, and sadness.
Yeah. So please speak to us a little bit about, the spirit of peace through music, the joy that you experience, and yet the power of what you're confronting that's at a whole different level of fear and real pain and suffering.
Well, actually, when we were just watching the video again, I actually started crying while watching that video again, and I've seen it maybe 300 times during the creation of it, and I've seen it since I've created it, and even just watching it just a few minutes ago, it brought me to tears again. I think the joy for me is when I see African kids whose clothes are raggedy and torn. They live in a dry climate. There's no water. They have to walk for miles for water. They have to scrape together to get food every day. But whenever you see videos of these kids, they're the happiest kids on the planet. Much more happier than the kids in America. The suicidal rate of young people in America is alarming. But you're not hearing about these kids in Africa killing themselves because they're happy to survive another day. They're not spoiled worrying about how many likes they're getting on Facebook or if they got good cell phone reception. They're happy that the sun has come up again and that they had some food and water for another day. I grew up in England, which was a racist society. And I was told as a young child, I was born in England. I didn't know any other place. I was the first generation of Black kids born in England. And when they called me a nigger and told me to go home, I was like, home where? This is where I was born. And so I grew up not belonging, feeling as though I didn't belong in England. I've never felt like I was an Englishman because I was told by English people that I didn't belong and that I was a nigger. But that didn't take away my joy every day that I lived in England and had the opportunity to live and learn and grow, enjoy my family, enjoy Caribbean music. When the police raided my parents' home and smashed up everything we owned, it didn't take away our joy. We cleaned up the house and carried on trucking.
Even after they punched your mom in the face
when the police
sent you to prison.
When the police knocked out 4 of my mother's teeth, for no reason, it never stopped my mother from getting up and enjoying the next day, dealing with the reality and carrying on. When the police kidnapped me, beat me up in a police cell and forced me to sign a pile of crimes that they could not solve. And I signed them thinking that when I went to court, I could say I was forced to sign them. When I went to court and had an all-white jury that just looked at me and said he's guilty, even though I had evidence that my face was covered in blood and that there was no evidence, not even for one of the charges that they pinned on me, they still sent me to jail for 1.5 years. Even through that, I used that opportunity in jail to write a small book of philosophy, to meet new friends, to write new songs, and prepare for my release to come out and embark on my musical career, And so, even when I talk to the elders, Antoinette interviewed one of her elder granduncles who has stories about slavery. I never once heard him say one bad word about white people. He had not one bad word to say in bitterness. And even in my family household, even though we suffered racism, and I've only told you a couple of things, there's a lot more, but we never once had a conversation about white people because we had white friends. My mom's best friend was an Irish lady named Mary. So we had no animosity to white people as a race. We just recognized that within the white race, there was a few people that were really bad and had really prejudiced viewpoints. But we never had any animosity or feelings to take revenge. Me and my friends never went out one day and said, let's go and get some white boys. We never did that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just waited for when the racist ones attacked us and then we gave them a good beating. But we never went out to do anything intentionally in retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we do face brutality. And since I've moved to America, I have faced racial injustice more on many, many occasions. And even to the point where I've nearly lost my life on more than one occasion in America because of trigger-happy security guards or police officers. But I'm still here and I'm still smiling and I'm still on the front line of change. So, you know, when you have hope for a better future, nothing can take away your joy. Mm-hmm. When you give up hope, then it's all over. End of story. Mm-hmm. Depression, suicide, that's it. But once you have hope, and I do have hope, because when we protest, there's black, white, brown, yellow, red, and I'm sure there's a few green people in there too, in the mix. There's every race standing up for justice. There's every race crying out for a better way forward. So we're not alone. This is not a black race versus everybody else. This is all races versus injustice and racism. So I am filled with hope. I am filled with joy because I believe in the victory of good over evil. And I know that this is God's universe. So in the end, all things work out for the best according to God's plan. So I am very, very optimistic. And I know that in the future, this country and the rest of the world is going to be a world of brotherly love, sisterly love, one God, one aim, one destiny, one blood, one heart, one peace, one love.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say when he said that, watching that little video, is, you know, because Pato's a lot more sensitive than I am. You know, there's things that he just cannot take. But I always tell him there's things that are hard truth. Watching the video is hard for a lot of people. I've noticed that since that video started, there are people dropping off because they don't want to see that. It's too hard for them to see. That's only a 5-minute video. If you've ever watched Roots, and I've watched Roots 100 times, that's a hard series to watch. Some people are like, I can only watch Roots one time before I just get angry and I just get mad and I just can't deal with it. You know what's harder than Roots? If you haven't seen it, check out that movie Rosewood. If you watch that movie Rosewood, which was done back in the 80s regarding the black town, that is the same thing like what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Any successful black town was burnt and killed. The people were killed and murdered by white supremacists. He can't get through that movie at all. You know, I've tried to sit down with him to watch it, but it's so hard. But it's the real ugly truth. You know, he can't sit through it because it's way too traumatizing. But I encourage people, if we want to get to beauty and goodness, we have to get to the truth first. The Urantia book says truth, beauty, and goodness. So let's know the truth. Let's acknowledge the truth. It's not Black history. It's actually American history. This is everybody's history they're all part of being involved in. If white people don't understand that part of that history, how can we get to the kumbaya and the good moments of that, of being positive? He can be positive, but a lot of other people can't. And since the George Floyd protest, there's been 10 lynchings that have happened across the country. You know, we may get depressed, but we're, like he says, we get happy. And if there's one thing that Black people will not do is hang ourselves by the rope, you know, and that's why they had to sit there and look into investigations. We may get depressed, but we're usually get happy. We're going to have our happy moments. We survive so much. We can find the joy and beauty in everything. We will not be hanging ourselves by a rope.
Black people normally overdose on spicy food, wine and chocolate. And some marijuana.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Smoke some weed, you know. I'm not gonna bother with all that. Definitely not gonna be doing that.
Well, I love it. You know, my friends, there's one comment here I want to read that's just really sweet. Tiffany says, And this is why I was honored in capital letters to have you preside my wedding.
Nice. Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank
I love you,
Tiffany.
girl.
You know, that's hundreds of weddings that Pato has performed as an interfaith minister. And each wedding is so unique. And I think the reason why they did it was because a lot of people who aren't in the church anymore, but they want to have an official ordination, they want an official wedding, but they felt that Pato is a brother and a friend. He always tells them, if you need somebody, my cell phone number is listed publicly, and he gives it out everywhere. Our information is out there publicly.
Yes.
Nobody's ever called us for a prank call. So people call and say, can you officiate my wedding? So he does. And he's like, all right, tell me when it is and where it's going to be. If it's this way and we're doing a tour, he's like, he reroutes the entire tour just to make sure he can be there for their wedding. We've done weddings on the beach. We've done weddings in the building. We've done weddings in churches. We've done weddings in the grass. We've done small weddings on a balcony. We've done large weddings on an estate property.
Done weddings on Skype.
Weddings on Skype. But what's amazing though is each one is individual and unique. And the people say, you know, we want you, because if you're going to a minister within a church, they're like, they're their minister. It's like, we are your family friend. And when people make the vows between each other, Pato also makes the audience make a vow too. We promise not to take sides. We promise to be there and
to support you.
Yes. And then he makes jokes. And I remember when he did one of the first weddings was between a Jewish person and a Christian person, and it's an interfaith wedding. And the Jewish family was like, who is this person, Pato Banton?
No, they said, who is this black guy?
Well, anyway, they had their reservations.
They couldn't pronounce my name.
They had their reservations, and yes, I saw their faces. And they were giving me
evil eye during the ceremony.
Mm-hmm. But we did the crushing and the glass and
we did
everything how they wanted.
It was a beautiful wedding.
At the end, they said they loved the wedding. They really had them laughing.
They came and hugged me and said, thank you for the most beautiful wedding ever.
Any wedding he does it's the only people crying is usually the groom, because he has like the best kind of vow thing and he has everybody bawling. But Pato's weddings are always fun. It's not a funeral, you know, it's not a like.
Even my funerals are fun.
Yes, even the funerals are fun. Even the baptisms are fun.
And it wasn't my intention to become a minister or a ordained minister. You know, I was just making my music and just being a spiritual person playing music. And my fans came and said, can you marry? No, at first they started bringing their children to my shows, asking me to bless their children. And I'm like, okay. So I would just bless their children. And some of them were pregnant and said, would you bless my baby inside my belly? And so I would put my hands and pray for the baby and pray for a safe delivery. Then they asked me to christen the children when they were born. And so I did that. And then they started asking me to marry them. And I'm like, well, I don't have, you know, the credentials. And so they said, go and get them. So I says, okay. So I went and got ordained online so I could visit hospitals, prisons, do weddings. And my fans asked me to baptize them. I do counseling, personal coaching, marriage counseling. I also counsel children. And sometimes I counsel the entire family to get the whole house back into order. So I'm very heavily involved in the lives of many, many people.
You're a family.
And I think maybe 100,000 people have got my cell phone number now, at least. And it's on my website, so they can go on there and call me directly. There's no manager, there's no middle guy. You know, we deal with everyone directly.
Okay.
If you Google Pato Banton, if you Google him, you'll find millions of hits regarding him. And if you just look in the comments under whether it's a video or an article or anything, you'll always see one person in there that says, you know, I met Pato once.
I love it. And so how can people, what's your websites that they can go to?
My main website is patobanton.com. And if they go to that site, they can see links to wherever else I am. But my spiritual group is Pato Banton Spiritual Family on Facebook. And we're in there every single day. That is where our family is located, interacting.
Yes. And I've got a new website now too.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and put those in the chat there,
Okay.
and I'll add them to the comments section. Well, any closing comments? I mean, we're having so much fun here. We're just gotten over time a little bit, but any closing comments?
The only thing I want to say is congratulations to Antoinette, because she just stepped into a leadership role with the Wall of Moms. I'm not sure if you know who they are, the Portland group of mothers, white ladies who was standing in line to protect the protesters. They went through a few upheavals recently, but Antoinette was invited in to restructure the group and bring it forward. And she has done an amazing, amazing job. So I'm very proud of her for that.
Thank you.
My last reflection that I want to say before Antoinette finishes is just that, you know, there is a lot of problems going on. And, you know, I just hope that everyone out there is staying true to their heart and not sitting on the sidelines in any of the issues. Get involved and seek change, you know, and educate yourself. If you're not sure, educate yourself so that you can make an intelligent decision about your personal way that you want to move forward to bring about progressive change in the world. I love you guys. Thank you so much for this interview, and I look forward to what the future holds.
Thank you. And so now that I've stepped in this role, and because of some technical and legal issues, we are now formally Wall of Moms International. And Wall of Moms International, WAMI, is moving forward in a progressive manner, because I've been reading some of the comments in the chat, you know, regarding how we're moving forward. And I know that people don't always understand that there are many levels and forms of protest, like Dr. Marty Casey, who's also chiming in. So she wants people to know how they can actually help. So I put in the chats that MLK, he always preached nonviolence, but he also spoke that riot is the language of the unheard. So if you want to know more about these different levels of protest, people have a different way of acting and reaching out. You know, so I won't tell anybody else who's been through pain and suffering how they should react to their own pain and suffering. I can only speak from my own experience and my own pain of how I want to move forward, just like how Pato is. So moving forward with this organization, why I felt so was important was that we also want to move forward in a nonviolent way of protest. We also want to encourage people for voter registration. We also want to encourage people to petition, to do a day of dialing. We're starting a thing that on Tuesdays, a day of dialing. This is something that people don't even have to leave their homes for. They can call prosecutors, they can call lawyers, they can call their local politicians. We also want to support more Black voices and amplify their voices in getting elected to local, city, and state. So even though the movement started in Portland with the Wall of Moms, we want to take this national and international and help everybody in a more progressive and a spiritual way, because everybody who comes into our team comes from a spiritual background. This is the way that we want to move forward. This is how we want to approach things from the spiritual perspective and still get work done, because all voices are still needed. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in there. And I believe that just like Pato is, you know, we're going to have better days. We will have better days. And just remember the good times versus the bad times, because the good times will outweigh most of the bad times. And let's do this together. So we're encouraging all people to stand with us together, everybody against racism. No division here.
Black Lives Matter.
That's right.
All right, my friends. What a treat. What a treat. You know, you were highly recommended by a good friend, John Raymer.
Oh, we love him.
And Ben Bowler and others. And, you know, I've heard so much about you, but just be able to have this time with you, it's just been a real joy. So again, thank you so much for who you are, your journeys this lifetime, and however many lifetimes it's been coming back to this third rock from the sun, this galaxy. And yeah, just look forward to more interactions with you, and enjoy the Unity Earth trip to September 21st, and just a lot of gratitude. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings.
One love.
And for everyone who's been listening, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or night, stay tuned for more of Some Other Peace coming up. All right, thank you all.